Hello everybody, my name is Professor Deborah Tedone, and I'm going to be narrating the Bioterrorism and Natural Disasters PowerPoint for you. The objectives of this PowerPoint is by the completion of this presentation, you will understand the definition of bioterrorism, what the definition of accidental disaster is, understand definition of what a natural disaster is, differentiate between the three, understand your nursing role to these, and how to best educate nurses and the community on each of the above. And as we go throughout this presentation, we'll discuss each of these different things: the natural, accidental, and terror attack. The definition of a natural disaster, coming right out of Webster, is, according to Webster Dictionary, a sudden and terrible event in nature, such as a hurricane, tornado, or flood, that usually results in serious damage and multiple deaths. A natural disaster is the result of naturally occurring events that have an impact on the environment. Some examples can be earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, landslides, tornadoes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, wildfires, and winter weather. And this particular summer, the summer of 2020, we have seen quite a few wildfires, especially in California and Texas. And as we will see in history, these are catastrophic and extremely difficult to deal with. One interesting factoid obtained from DeMarco and Walsh is between 1900 and 2016, there have been more than 21,000 disasters occurring in the world. One extremely highly destructive and unpredictable natural disaster is a hurricane. Hurricane Harvey resulted in 69 deaths and 450,000 people affected, and cost the United States $58 billion for damages. Hurricane Irma resulted in 83 deaths. 5.7 million people were affected and cost the U.S. $50 billion in damages. Hurricane Maria resulted in 55 deaths and cost the U.S. Billions and billions of dollars worth of damages. Healthcare organizations to alleviate the suffering related to these disasters. Collaborative effort between medical personnel, first responders, and government plays a significant role in the recovery after a natural disaster. Examples are local health department nursing personnel, school nurse organizations, volunteers from medical reserve corps, and certified medical response teams, and that's just a few. And these have all worked together to provide help, and this was seen in schools during H1N1, when immunizations, as well as engaging in surveillance, were activities that were extremely necessary and helpful for the preservation of children. The CDC Center for Disease Control has called for the mobilization of public health workforce to ensure the training and education of communities across the nation regarding biologic, chemical, radiologic, and explosive device attacks. And the picture on this screen shows CDC training in Anniston for Ebola training, and that was 2015. DeMarco and Walsh tells a nation's capacity to respond to emergencies, disasters, and terrorism depends in part on the ability of the healthcare professional and public health officials to rapidly and effectively detect, manage, and communicate during an emergency, during an event resulting from mass casualties. And I'd like to review this site. This is how many people know that the CDC offers training for many different facets for required public safety. And let's click into this and see if we can pull it up. Okay, here we see the CDC for Disease Control and Prevention, Disaster Epidemiology and Response. And there's training and technical assistance. And over on the side you can see different things that are available for the public and for nursing. It's a pretty neat site. And I recommend that each of you take the time to review this when you have some time. Accidental disasters, broadly defined, are those occurrences that happen as the result of circumstance factors, such as road conditions, human error, and physical plant deterioration. These are usually not deliberate, and they may not sound as bad as terrorism or other disasters, but they can cause mayhem and death perhaps to thousands. And if you want to go to the above site, it shows us some examples of some man-made disasters. Man-made disasters, let's see if we can pull these up. And we've got the Bhopal gas leak in 1984, which resulted in 8,000 deaths or more. The Jilin chemical explosion, which resulted in, the initial death count might have been small, but surely a lot more people died as a result of the explosions. The Tennessee coal ash spill, 2008. And with this, it cost $675 million worth of damage, with another $975 million needed to clean up the slurry. And 6 months after, only 3% is removed. The Sitajaro mud volcano, the North Pacific garbage patch, the Gulf War spill, Deepwater Horizon oil spill, the Exxon Valdez oil spill, Guiyao e-waste dump in China, the Myanmar water cyanide contamination. Of course, everybody knows about Chernobyl, or you probably know about Chernobyl. London's Great Smog, the Minamata disease, Libby, Montana asbestos contamination, the Love Canal toxic landfill, the Centralia fire. This is called the Door to Hell, which was a natural gas field in Derwiz, Turkmenistan, which to this day forth still continues to burn since 1971. The death of RLC, the Palomares incident, Castle Bravo, and here's some information on the authors' names. So if you wanted to read up on those, they're pretty interesting. The Marco and Walsh state that terrorism continues that the main goals of terrorism are creating fear, causing casualties, and rendering sites unusable. Fear and intimidation are potent concepts for the human psyche to process. And these are defined as criminal acts, including against civilians, committed with the intent to cause death or serious bodily injury. The definition of bioterrorism, according to the Webster Dictionary, is terrorism involving the use of biological weapons. And the Wikipedia includes the word intentional in its definition. And the word intentional is not included in Webster. Some history on bioterrorism. As long ago as 1346, the Tatar army threw their corpses of plague victims over the walls of Kharkiv to intentionally infect and immobilize the seaport on the Crimean coast. 400 years later, the Russians used the same tactic against Swedes, and we could go on and on. New and improved weapons of destructions. They are airborne infections, organisms that can remain fairly stable in most environments. They're susceptible to population, have person-to-person transmission. They're difficult to diagnose and or treat, easy and relatively inexpensive to obtain, creates panic. They overwhelm the medical community. Perpetrators easily escape, and previous development of organisms for biologic weapons. And does any of this sound familiar? Disaster preparedness in a culturally diverse society. A culturally diverse plan must be available for any and all disasters. It's important to consider all ethnicities, races, cultures, and languages across all disciplines involved in planning and implementation. Culture is a learned knowledge of values and beliefs of a particular group that are passed down through generations. During times of normalcy, a person's culture is a comfort and a reassurance. One thing that determines survivor support is the degree of community cohesiveness. Education is cultural competency, and disaster management is to focus on the most vulnerable populations, to include older adults and seniors, obstetrics, perinatal and neonatal, medically needy and terminally ill, children and pediatrics, homeless, individuals with disabilities, individuals in rural areas, individuals with mental illness, and individuals with limited English proficiency. Disaster management works in a timeline and cycle. It starts with a disaster, goes through the rescue relief stage, then rehabilitations and reconstructions. But the cycle is not done yet. The next step is vital to the plan for the event of another disaster: plan prevention, mitigation, and preparedness. During preparedness, it's important to decrease the effect of an unanticipated disaster or anticipated natural disaster. And as you can see, planning is absolutely necessary and is the key to success. You must have risk assessment, all hazard vulnerability studies must be in place, and you must have federal and state response networks available. Natural Incident Management System, or the NIMS, is a structured, flexible framework that guides the response to disasters of governments at all levels, private companies, and non-governmental operations. In the United States, the DHS is the central organization overseeing many different agencies that focus on the safety and security of our nation. FEMA, or the Federal Emergency Management Administration, is the lead agency for emergency management. The role of state government is to supplement and facilitate local efforts before, during, and after incidents. And of course, we all know the importance of PPE. PPE is necessary to save the lives of medical personnel, patients, and the public at large. OSHA has outlined 4 levels and 4 types of PPE necessary for personal protection. PPE is, if PPE is issued, training should be done for the selection, maintenance, and implementation of the equipment regarding necessary protection to yourself and to others. Mental health issues. National Helpline, or SAMHSA, During the response phase of a disaster, there can be serious and permanent mental health issues. And what can be done about this? The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Agency provides guidelines for working with people who need recovering from natural disasters for mental health issues. And this is also available for nurses. Nursing psychological care during a disaster. You should describe the phase of psychological response to a disaster and expect behavioral responses. You understand the impact of vulnerable populations, provide support for survivors, use therapeutic relationships, identify behavioral responses, differentiate between adaptive and maladaptive responses, understand the impact on children's growth and family development, identify appropriate coping strategies for survivors, families, responders, and themselves. Identify survivor and responders requiring additional mental health care and refer to appropriate resources. What can we do? Join your local MRC or CRT. Familiarize yourself with your community's emergency response plan. Take the ICS training online. Prepare your personal emergency kit, evacuation kit, and it can be found at this website. And discuss emergency preparedness drills in the medical institution where you work. These should be undertaken at least yearly. And food for thought and discussion. According to what we've just learned about community public health course and this presentation, which type of disaster is COVID-19, or is it not considered a disaster? And here are our references. Most of the slides information were derived from DeMarco and Walsh. Thank you very much, and have a blessed day. Bye-bye now.